Hello. I've called this week's energy report, How Awake Are You Really? Because I think that's a really big question at the moment. So it is the week beginning the 30th of January 2023. I'm Karen Turpin from karenturpin.com. The divide between those of us who are awake and those of us who are asleep, I think, has never been greater. For years, we've tried to warn people about many things. They ignored us, they called us all manner of derogatory terms, and they laughed at us as they imagined us wearing tinfoil hats. For the record, I've been talking about all of this kind of thing publicly. Conspiracy theories, government cover-ups, ETs, and all of this kind of thing since about 2004, and I have never yet once worn a tinfoil hat, and nor will I. So now that that's out the way, really the list of what we need to be aware of in order to stay healthy is immense. I've watched things over the years, and it's becoming even more and more scary, to be honest, because there's more and more things rolling out as the technology to produce things increases. Even just this morning, I watched a video on, TikTok or somewhere about plastic eggs. Now, with CGI and all of this kind of thing, it's easy to put forward something as truth that is actually really false. So I know that we can't believe everything we watch on YouTube or anywhere, and we can't believe everything that we read either, and that's the problem with some of this, and that's why I think people have called us conspiracy theories or lunatics or whatever. But anyway, back in the day, I talked about food additives. I talked about factory farming. I talked about chemtrails, fluoride, carcinogenic ingredients in skincare. And I talked about the dangers of childhood vaccination and so much more. And yet here we are, all these years later, and it's still going on, even more so actually. Multinational companies or corporations are not held accountable. The global elites are still sickos, and the government and the justice system is even more corrupt than ever before. I can see why some people make fun of those of us who try to warn them of these things, because nothing really seems to change, does it? I remember when I did my holistic nutrition degree in 1996. That's when I first discovered what they're really putting in our food and how it's all being manipulated. I believed what my teachers were telling me, but I almost couldn't believe that this could really be happening. It was my first realization that governments don't care about us, actually. I couldn't believe how they would allow it. And then I realized, well, they're condoning it because they're gaining from it. That was a big wake-up call for me in terms of food. I really believed that if they sold it in the shops, it must be okay then. That was a sad awakening, I have to say. And remember, this is 1996. The internet was just getting going. You couldn't look up very many things back then. But I couldn't understand why someone wasn't stopping this, why it was allowed to continue. It's laughable, really, now. And it's so clear that this is happening, and yet still people can't see it. People don't understand that their government don't care about them. How deeply programmed we have all been then, don't you think? If even the events of the last few years haven't woken people up. Or enough people, really. Where I live, masks are not required. Even when they were, many of us didn't wear them. And yet I still see people wearing them now. I know it's rude, but sometimes I actually can't stop myself from just staring at them. Oh my fucking God. I say to myself, excuse my French, especially those driving alone in their cars. Have you seen those? I always wonder what they're going to do when they get home. Do they wear them in the house? Do they seal the windows and doors closed in case some fake virus manages to get its way in and they breathe it in the air inside their houses? I don't know. I'd love to know what they actually do at home. So if you do know, let me know. I'm really curious. Anyway, we think we're so awake, don't we? But how awake are we really? Awakening comes in stages, and there are many, many levels to it, and many different aspects to it as well. So, new clients often say things to me like, oh, I had my awakening 4 years ago, and I'm happy for them. But I also smile to myself and I think, okay, you started to wake up 4 years ago. But there's so much more to go in the awakening process. I started my awakening process probably around 1992, and I still got a long way to go, just the same as you do as well. Because we wake up in some areas but not in others. We don't get the full picture just because we claim to have had an awakening. Awakening can begin sometimes with a trauma. It can be losing someone close to you through death. That can wake you up to a particular level of some spirituality or understanding of maybe the continuous existence of consciousness after death of the physical body, that kind of thing, as in spirituality, mediumship, that kind of thing. Maybe we have an out-of-body experience through a trauma, maybe a car accident or an illness or some surgery thing happening with anaesthetic, maybe us waking up while we're on the table and looking from an out-of-body perspective, that kind of thing. Often it can, there's a shock involved, and this can cause actually a splitting of your consciousness. And it makes you aware and yet unaware at the same time that there are different parts of yourself. This is mostly unconscious as well, though. So maybe, you're just fragmented, or the person is just fragmented and not able to function very well, but they are unconscious of why that is and what's really going on with their consciousness as a whole. You can also awaken more on just a physical level, which is, what we're seeing recently, I think, with people in the mass consciousness anyway. And this is the realization of corrupt governments, the negative effect of processed foods and additives, pharmaceuticals and environmental pollutants and things like that. So when we wake up to something that we think is corrupt or damaging to the environment or to us, we often become the activist. And sorry, I'm just going to put my phone down there. Hopefully you can't hear it vibrating through the floor. Where was I? So when we wake up to something that we think is corrupt or very damaging, we often become the activist. I was a bit of an activist many years ago when I discovered battery hens. This is kind of funny but kind of serious. I joined this group called Chickens Lib. It was all about getting chickens out of battery, factories and out back onto the land and things like that. I was kind of deadly serious about it, but everybody laughed at me. Anyway, there you go. That's a personal story. So I became the chicken activist, if you like. And we try to lecture people everyone and anyone that will listen to us, and even people that don't listen to us, we try to educate them as well, because we've just come into the awareness of something and that we're really passionate about it and we want everybody to know, and that's a really good thing. That's a good part of awakening, right? But sometimes we're not fully awake to the thing that we are aware about, because we're only seeing a small part of it. For example, this latest climate change agenda. Well, of course, Al Gore had a go at this first time around, talking about global warming and the melting of the ice caps. Of course, now they call it climate change because I think it's been proven that global warming hasn't really happened. Those of us living near the coastline are not up to our neck in water by rising sea levels. Although I can acknowledge that some of the low-lying islands, in the Pacific and things, are struggling. But, I would question how much of that is natural earth changes, because they've been going on since the year dot. Anyway, in a climate change researcher that was quoted in the climate talks long time ago. I can't remember what year this was now, but Al Gore quoted this climate researcher who said that the North Pole would be ice free by the summer of 2013 because of the danger of global warming at that time. Well, clearly that's, a lot of that has been brought to the light of truth. A lot of it was a con, but there you go. That's the kind of thing that happens. So a little while ago, I was talking to a lady at my local dog park. She actually started to cry about climate change. She was desperate for people to stop using plastics and burning fossil fuels, and she was literally terrified for the future. She said that she's awake, and she got very angry when I suggested that it's not all that it at first appears to be. She got very angry, and she told me that it's because of people like me that we're in the mess we're in on this planet. People who are unaware of what's really going on. Well, at that point, I decided not to button my lip anymore. If you know me, you know that I usually speak up. Anyway, I asked her what she thought of chemtrails and what did she think of weather modification, and what was her take on directed laser weapons that they use to start forest fires. Well, she just stared at me blankly. It was literally as if I'd just slapped her around the face with a wet fish. She was stunned, had nothing to say. She was aware of one aspect of this climate change agenda. She didn't realise it was an agenda, of course, but she was unaware that they themselves are creating it for their own, usually financial gain or evil purposes. So you see, there are levels of awakening, and that's why it's such a massive job to wake up enough people to create this change, this shift of consciousness that is required for us to really begin to create the much prophesized golden age. Let's just call it the new earth for now. Personally, I feel we've got a long way to go before we're at a golden age, but definitely we are trying to birth a new age, a new earth. And it's impossible for this to happen overnight. Yet there are signs, I believe, that things are starting to happen. So let's use the analogy of a pregnant woman about to give birth. We know that there are many changes that happen inside weeks and weeks before that baby is finally birthed or she's fully in labour. The baby changes its position and it starts to drop down into the pelvis, and the pelvis bones actually open out and the cervix dilates, and there's hormonal changes, and there's a whole load of things going on, inside. And Sure, some of it is, palpable or visible. The midwife can say, oh, the baby's dropped and it's in position, engaged, all this kind of thing. Sure, we can see that. But most of the changes are happening internally and we can't see them. And I do believe that there are some big changes happening in the world for the better, for the good. But a lot of this, I think, is going on behind the scenes. We know it's never going to be reported on mainstream because they're corrupt. But you can actually, if you read between the lines and if you've developed your intuition, you can actually discern what's truth and what's untruth to quite a large degree, to be honest. So when you hear a report on mainstream, you can kind of feel if there's the truth resonance there or not, the truth vibration. Remember though, your intuition is always correct, but your interpretation of it may not be correct. And this is a little bit of a problem and where we can go a bit wrong, if you like. So let me say, for example, if you're feeling stressed and worried about a virus, when you hear reports that say that there's a new strain or that numbers are up or that this new strain is more virulent, whatever it is that you hear, if your belief is that this whole virus thing is real and dangerous, it will resonate as truth for you. Because it's kind of like you've got the template, in a sense, inside your body that's going to resonate with the truth of what you believe. It's your belief system. It resonates with your fear and belief. But the opposite is also true too. So you can find things that validate anything that you want it to, pretty much. And this is why, the more you research and the deeper down the rabbit hole that you go, some people literally get lost there. And that's not always a good thing. I touched on that last week in my video. Let's say then that we do create our reality. And that is because if you live in fear of this virus, you will behave in ways in which you align to that fear vibration, actually, but to that. So you might decide to get an injection thing, you might decide to wear a mask or do the whole social distance, not seeing your loved ones kind of vibe, right? And as well, your mind will go into what we call confirmation bias. And that means that you will see evidence all around you that what you believe is correct. And basically what you're aligning to is that timeline where this virus is something to be feared. So in a sense, you're creating that reality. You're hopping on that timeline. You've got the confirmation bias. Everything around you is proving to you that this must be correct. And that's kind of what we've seen with many people over the last few years. Alternatively, though, if your belief is that there is no virus, there is no such thing, it's all fake, it's all an agenda or whatever, you will live your life as if there is no virus, and you will create your reality to reflect that. You won't feel any fear around catching something. Your vibration then will be higher, actually, because the fear vibration is a lower vibration. Your immune system is probably going to be stronger because a higher vibration creates a healthier body. Illness is always lower vibration. So you are literally, kind of maybe metaphorically though, rising above that whole virus agenda, okay? So you literally are rising onto a timeline where that thing doesn't exist. That's not a judgment, really, to say that you are rising above it or you are beyond it. It's actually a reflection of a state of mind, or a state of being, and it's literally a level of vibration and awakening. Maybe you could even say that it's awakening from the spell or the mass formation psychosis that is part of this psychological operation that has been played out on this planet in recent years. And sometimes people dip in and out of this reality or this timeline. We kind of refer to that as going back into the matrix. So like, my awareness is beyond that. I know it's all dodgy, and yet every now and again I put a mask on because I feel unsafe or something. I don't personally, but some people do. They dip in and out of this reality. Some even to the point that they have overridden their intuition that said don't get the thing, and they've gone and done it anyway through fear, right? And I appreciate that. Could be fear of losing a job, fearing of not paying your mortgage, losing your home. I get all of that. I get it. But what you actually did is, when your intuition said don't do it, you overrode that, you dropped down and you did the thing or whatever, as an example. So any awakening is a good thing, but there is so much more yet to go, of course. My advice would be to take nothing at surface value, at surface level. Read more into the war in Ukraine. These Aboriginal land rights, that is a big thing in Australia here at the moment, the voice and all of that stuff. Read more into that. It's not just what's laid out at the surface. Read more into what's going on with the classified documents that are stored in people's garages. Read more into, is it really Michelle or is it Michael? Read more into political ties that government officials have with pharmaceutical companies. You know, it's never just that surface thing. You always got to dig down a little bit more. There's so much to research, and yet if you spend too much time in that, really it takes you away from yourself and your own evolution, or your own next level of awakening too. So I do urge you, caution to not get caught up in the research, because in a sense that's just another level of the matrix, because you're researching what's going on in the matrix instead of going inward into your soul self. So I do believe that going deeper into yourself, to know yourself at a deeper level, is far more important. And yet people do also have the tendency, literally it's like polarity, to swing. So they're not interested in anything political, anything that's going on in the physical world. They go fully into this whole spiritual part of self, which is great, but then they have the tendency to become ungrounded, and really out of touch with reality. And in a sense, you can't talk to them either, because they're, well, we sometimes say floating in la la land. My goodness, I've been accused of that so many times myself over the years. However, it's not really a more evolved state. It is a stage of awakening. Yes, it's a stage of awakening that I think we should move through, we can move through. Because the goal is to become embodied, to access the higher dimensions of consciousness, the higher aspects of your soul, and then almost bring that consciousness and awareness down into the physical body. So you're bringing higher awareness into this physical aspect of self. Living in the bliss state of a spiritual awakening constantly, it just becomes escapism. It doesn't actually better the world. Self-realization is the knowledge and the embodiment of our true and authentic self, of our higher self, beyond the ego and beyond the fear and beyond the limitation. That's the self-realization. Or you could say that it is the fulfillment of our personal potential in this life, or being all that we truly are. This is what I'm very passionate about. This is what I do with my clients in private session work, energy healing or coaching, and in my courses as well. To me, that's my reason for being here. That's what I help people with. As a reminder, my course Authentically You starts today. You can still jump in quickly for the next couple of days only before we really get deeply into the work. But if you're interested to discover all that you are on the inside, and that is by going into these more higher levels of awareness and consciousness of your own soul self, and then bringing it through into the physical to activate it, growing yourself in that way. If you're interested in that, then please reach out to me. I would love to assist you with that in any way that I can. But I think that's enough from me for today. Hopefully I've given you a few things to think about. As usual, reach out to me if you've got any questions, if you'd like to share your experiences, and of course make sure you tell me if you know what those people that wear masks in a car on their own do when they get home. Do they take them off, or do they leave them on? Do they open the windows, or do they stay sealed shut? I would really love to know that. I'm genuinely curious. So if you know the answer, make sure to let me know. I'll see you next week. Have a great week. Bye-bye.